All right, next up we're going to be talking about white balance. White balance is really important because it gets baked into your movie file. And it's just like picture style, so you want to get it right if you can, if you have time. It's one of these things, if you're running and gunning and you don't have time to get it perfect, that's all right, as long as you get it close. Because if you're way off, trying to fix it in post will take forever, especially if you're new to color correction or trying to remove a color cast. All right, so we got to talk about what is white balance. Basically, white balance is really simple. You're telling the camera what is white. With our eyes do it. Our brain actually probably does it just instantaneously. We go inside, outside. We could be under fluorescent lights. We could be under tungsten lights. We could be under daylight, cloudy, shade. Doesn't matter. Our eyes figure it out on the fly. But our camera, for the most part, can't do it automatically, even though it does have automatic white balance. And since we're not shooting raw and we can't change it super easy in post, it's really important to get it right in camera. So right now I am shooting this all in daylight. There's snow on the ground and light is actually reflecting off the snow. And actually the sun is back this way, so it's hitting the snow and kind of coming into my office window, which is actually a double pane kind of sliding door actually. All right, daylight is about 5,500 Kelvin. With these full frame cameras, the 6D and the 5D Mark III, we can actually dial in the Kelvin. So we can dial it into taste, whatever we want, a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler. We can also use the presets. There's lots of different presets to choose from to get us there quickly. And we can also do custom. So we can actually use something like a gray card or a white card. This is usually a little bit more accurate to get a custom white balance. Right now, what I want to do is kind of step through all the different color temperatures. And I'm going to be using daylight as my base. So right now I don't have any softboxes on. And what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to turn the softboxes on next. And these softboxes have fluorescent lights on them. They're actually better than this kind of fluorescent light. The ones that I've got on these softboxes are pretty expensive lights. And they're daylight balanced and they have what's called a high CRI index. Now, with compact fluorescents, like what I've got in here, they run cool, which is great. They use less energy, but that comes at a kind of a compromise because their color renditioning index, the quality of light in terms of colors that you see, like if you've ever been, probably one of the lowest CRI number light would be something like a metal halide light that you would see in a parking lot. And if you've ever looked at your car, let's say your car is normally blue and you're looking down at it under these parking lot lights, let's say, and you look down at it and your car looks green. It's not the right color. Well, it has a very low CRI index. These you can get in different varieties. Usually the ones that you buy from the store are pretty cheap. Sometimes have a low CRI. I think they're getting better. The ones that I have in these softboxes have a high CRI, and basically what happens is to make them run so efficiently, don't hardly produce any heat and use not that much current draw. They have, and the green spectrum, and I don't know a whole bunch about light theory, but basically when you have a regular normal incandescent light or regular lamp light bulb that you have in your house, it has pretty much even light throughout the entire spectrum. This one doesn't. It doesn't have energy across the whole spectrum like an incandescent does. It has basically a big spike on green. So sometimes you can get kind of a green bias with these lights. So let's go ahead and turn these lights on and maybe we'll see a slight green tint when I do it. Okay, now I've closed the shades, and I've turned on the soft boxes. I've got two soft boxes, one kind of right there and one right over there. And so right now I have kept the color temperature that I set custom to the outdoor light is still set that way. So the color temperature that you see right now should look a little bit different because these daylight balanced are not probably totally matched outside, but they're usually pretty close. And you probably notice that the fill light in the room has changed quite dramatically too. But let's go ahead now. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to actually use my gray card, and I'm going to get I use a custom white balance on these soft boxes and see how it changes. All right, now we've actually custom white balanced to a gray card using these soft boxes with the fluorescent lights in them. And I think you're going to notice it looks maybe a little bit cooler than it did before. All right, we're moving our way down the color spectrum. Right now we're using a regular household lamp light, and it could be clear or it could be frosted like this one. And we haven't changed the color temperature for before, so my skin is probably going to look a lot more orangey or warm or reddish looking. Just a really quick history lesson just to kind of understand where all this is coming from. When Thomas Edison designed the light bulb a long time ago, I believe he used a carbon element in the light bulb, and he wanted to match it after the candle, what color temperature the candle gives off. And if I understand from Wikipedia, it's around 1850 or so. The modern day light doesn't use carbon, it uses tungsten. And so we have a preset for that in our camera, and it's around 3200 Kelvin. And so you can actually dial it right to tungsten, and you should be in pretty good shape if all of the lights in the room are similar to a household lamp. Now you're going to run into situations where it's not just going to be a household lamp, it's going to be something like a compact fluorescent. Well, these are usually, depends on there's different types, and sometimes it won't tell you what it is on here. But a lot of times the white fluorescent preset that you have in the camera will work really well for when you have compact fluorescents. Because they also, like, we've talked about, they also kind of give off a little bit of a green tint to them. So I think it pulls it more towards magenta in that preset to help offset that. And then you're going to run in situations where you're like in an open office or something like that, and you're going to have these tubes. Well, the tubes come in two varieties from what I've seen. You'll see like a janitor might order the wrong type, and you'll have a ceiling of just a whole bunch of these tubes, and some will be what's called like soft white, and then some will be a bit warmer, and so you have a mixture of them, which makes it even harder to get right. But usually these will also work really well for the white fluorescent preset that you have in the camera. But in situations where they are mixed, then you really do need to get like a gray card and use that to get the right color temperature. Along the gray card, what you can do too is with the presets is find something in the room or wherever you're at with different lights, and try to find something that's very neutral, like this gray or a white wall, and then don't look at your display, but look at the wall for a few seconds and say, okay, that is, my brain is telling me that's what's white. Then look down at your camera, it's like, oh, that doesn't look the same as what I'm seeing on the wall. So then start playing with the Kelvin adjustment. If you're in a room that's like 3200 or a tungsten bulb, to start around 3200 and say, well, the wall is close, and then just start moving in either direction, and you'll say, oh, right about there. And you can just kind of dial it into taste. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to color correct for this before we go any further. Okay, now we've color corrected for this particular light bulb. Now you're going to notice there's a little bit of mixture going on here because the blinds are bleeding in some natural light into the room. So behind me, that wall is actually gray, and it's not the blue that you're kind of seeing it as. So we kind of have a mixture light, but I custom white balance to here because I just use basically a gray card, and then I use my ES software, which we'll show how to do later, and I tapped on there and it corrected it for me. So basically you're going to run into like 3 different situations. So you're going to be outdoors, and I got to tell you, the white balance on these Canon cameras works awesome. I think it works better than Nikon. Nikon gets a little bit confused, but automatic white balance, Canon cameras outside work great. You pretty much don't have to choose between cloudy, shade, or daylight. It's gonna nail it for you. So that's one situation. You're outside, automatic white balance works great. The second situation is you're gonna be with a light bulb like this, tungsten, go to the tungsten preset, and it's gonna work pretty good. And if it doesn't work pretty good and you're close, then go to the Kelvin adjustment, work your way down to 3200 and kind of work your way around. You shouldn't go back, you'll be maybe 2800 to like 3600, somewhere in that range. You're gonna find something that's gonna work really well. And again, like I said, find something neutral in the room, something that's gray, white, or maybe even black. Black's harder, but especially white. Look at something and then just look at the screen until you get it to where it looks like the actual white wall, for instance. And then the other situation is you're going to be in an office space or somewhere where you're going to have white fluorescent tubes. Just dial it in that way. And then in those situations, if it doesn't quite look right and there's a little bit of green bias to it, just go into custom white balance shift and then bring it down towards magenta ever so slightly, and it will get rid of that, and it should look a lot better. All right, now I'm going to step through all the different presets that you have. As our control, we're going to start off with daylight. And right now I have no lights on in the room, just sun coming in through the window here with the light bouncing off the snow. So what we're going to do first is, and I've custom white balanced it to this, so this is our control. So now we're going to work our way through the different presets. Okay, this is the daylight preset, daylight. All right, this is the shade, and you can see it got warmer. All right, this is cloudy, cloudy. All right, this is tungsten, and you can see it got blue. So normally when you have a tungsten light at 3200 and you want to make it bluer because it's already so warm. So since we're already on daylight, it's going to get even bluer. All right, this is fluorescent, a little bit warmer than the tungsten, and you can see it's just a little, it's still on the cool side, because again, we're comparing this to natural daylight as our control. Just for kicks, this is flash, which looks very much like a tungsten light. All right, now we're back to custom white balance for just daylight. No other lights are in the room. And I want to give you a few hints and tricks for custom white balance. Even though I'm not going to go show you how to custom white balance since we've already done that in a previous chapter, I want to give you a few tricks and hints. The first one is in Canon's manual. When you look through the viewfinder and you see kind of that spot meter circle in the middle, basically all you have to do to get a proper white balance is to fill just that portion of the frame. So if I put this right in the middle of the frame like I am, and that's all you need, is just right in the middle. You don't have to fill the frame. It just has to be in that spot meter center of the frame. The next item is it doesn't need to be in focus. I can be wildly out of focus. It doesn't really matter. Exposure wise, it kind of does matter, because if you're like 2 or 3 stops off, you want to get your exposure set right first and then set your white balance on the gray card. Or you can use the gray card to actually get the exposure first and then do it. And like I said before, if I didn't say it before, you can use white, but Canon recommends gray as being more accurate. A couple of other things is what you want to do is, my light source is pretty much this direction. It's not towards, the light is not coming right over the camera or behind the camera. It's coming from that direction. You don't want to take your gray card and basically point it towards the light source. You want to point it, angle it pretty much right at the camera. And that'll give you the most accurate, not only exposure, but it'll give you the most accurate white balance as well. A couple other things, if you're in a pinch and you don't have one of these do fold up really small. You could, fit them in your pocket, and they don't take up any room in terms of your camera bag. You can use paper, an envelope like this, or regular paper, but what I found with these is they try to make this look a little bit whiter. And what they do is they usually add a chemical or something into there has a slight bit of blue in it. So using that won't give you the most accurate, but if you're in a pinch, a piece of paper, white piece of paper, will definitely work. So over the years, I've noticed, and it didn't take too long, I would say maybe 6 months to a year, after doing so many custom white balances, you'll look through the viewfinder and you'll look at the gray and you'll say, ooh, it looks cool or it looks warm. It looks too blue or it looks too orange, or it looks too green or it looks too magenta. After a while, you're train your eye. If you do it enough, you'll train your eye, and you'll actually be able to sometimes actually just take the Kelvin and dial it pretty much to eye and be pretty close. So you'll be surprised how fast your eye learns what a neutral gray is. There's lots of things, in terms of video that I've trained my eye for. I never saw moire before. Well, I did, but maybe on a subconscious level, but now it annoys me and I don't like to have moire. Same thing with training your eye to what neutral gray is like. You'll get better at it over time. So the next thing I want to talk about is if you don't have time to do this, A lot of times you're going to be like, Dave, I'm running a gun and I just don't have time to put a gray card in the frame to get the right one. So let's say you've dialed it into whatever you think is closest, tungsten, fluorescent light, daylight, automatic white balance, whatever. But you do at the end of the shoot have time to put this in the frame. So you've already gotten yourself somewhat close, but you can get yourself even closer and save yourself a ton of work in post by, let's say you're done with the shoot or whatever you've done, just pull this out, put it in the frame. The actors or whatever you're doing, the interview, you're done. You just put this in the frame. You could be in the frame with it. It doesn't matter. And this will be a reference. So when you're in your nonlinear editor, you can take your eyedropper tool or whatever and click it on what's neutral, and it'll help get you closer to removing whatever color cast you might have in the image. So basically, in a nutshell, use your presets. When you'd want to use custom white balances in a situation where, let's say, like for fluorescent lights, you can dial in the preset, but you might have a green tint. But when you work with a gray card, it will get you exactly where you want to be. Because there's two different things when it comes to custom white balance. There's the blue to, or cool to warm look, the blue to, like, let's say orange, that type of push and pull. And then there's also the green to the magenta, that type of push pull. Most of the time when you're dealing with lights, you only have to deal with the blue to warm. But sometimes, depending on the lights or whatever is going on, to make it as correct as you can, use custom white balance and you will get both of those done at the same time. All right, that's pretty much it for white balance.